Testing, 1, 2, 3.
Thanks. Welcome everyone to the Electoral Area Services Committee meeting of Wednesday, April 5th, 2023. And there's lots of new faces here. So as the name suggests, we're a committee of the board made up of electoral area directors, or in this case today, many alternates. And we make recommendations to the board on issues related to land use and delivery of local government services in electoral areas. And we respectfully acknowledge that we live and work on the traditional and unceded territories of the Coast Salish and New Chalmouth people, and we offer our gratitude to the First Nations for their care for the earth, their teachings about our earth, and let's hope we're able to respectfully use those teachings in the work that we do on this committee. So with that, I'll turn to the corporate secretary to guide us through this.
Thank you, Madam Chair. We start with the approval of the agenda, and the recommendation for that is we have supplemental information to be added. So the recommendation is that the agenda be amended with the addition of one new business item, item R4, application number RZ22A03, and that is supplemental information from Thomas Hyde, and that the agenda be amended, as amended, be approved.
Do I have a motion? Is everyone okay with that? Did everyone get the supplemental? Yeah, okay. I had a mover, a seconder, all in favor? Agenda's approved. Adoption of minutes.
Thank you, Madam Chair. We have the adoption of the minutes for the Electoral Area Services Committee meeting of March 15th.
Do I have I have a motion to approve the minutes and a seconder. All in favor? Minutes are approved.
Thank you, Madam Chair. We have no business arising from the minutes. We have, next up is public input period. So we'll just look to the gallery to see if...
Great, so public input period is a time for anyone in the public who would like to provide up to 3 minutes of comments to us about something on the agenda. And if you are actually an applicant, then you would probably just wait till your item comes up.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair. I would like to speak on IN1, Information 1. It's all on the advisory committees, and I would also like to include the parks committees. And starting off on a positive part,
Just a second, Cliff, tell us who you are.
Oh, I'm Cliff Evans from Shawnigan Lake.
Oh,
I'm sorry,
perfect.
Madam Chair, on a positive part, we were looking at Williams Park the other day. We normally do a tour once a month around all the problem spots, and we've been trying to get rid of a log that's been blocking about 1/3 of the Shawnigan Creek. It's a big cedar log about 3.5 foot through and about maybe 30 foot long, and lo and behold, after 4 years, it's disappeared. I don't know who's taken it, but it's a great thing. On the other hand, I noticed that on the reports for Information 1, their areas A, C, and F have given reports from their advisory commissions. And I noticed that B and some of the other areas have not given reports. In fact, I phoned our former chair of the advisory committee, and he didn't know who the chair was even going to be. And Madam Chair, the people of Shawnigan Lake would like to see open meetings again, community meetings, so they know what's going on. They feel disconnected. The other day, a woman was looking out her window and she saw two people walking down the tracks, looking at her property. They had Visi vests on. And of course, if it happened to you, you would wonder what they were doing too. And if we had the meetings, maybe some of this would disappear. They would know what was going on in the neighborhood. People feel that they have a disconnect. I think that the CVRD needs to get back to community meetings to where we have people chatting eye to eye and perhaps being part of the solution to problems rather than being the problem. So, Madam Chair, I hope that we can get our commissions, our parks commissions and our advisory commissions up so that people know what's going on again. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Evans. Anyone else? All right, moving on.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Next up is delegations. We have Ryan Watson, Social Planning Cowichan, regarding update on Social Planning Cowichan's recent work and upcoming projects.
That's great. We actually have Rosalie Salmon.
Yes, apologies.
Welcome, Rosalie.
I'm not Ryan, I'm Rosalie.
That's okay.
But thank you to Ryan for putting in our application to do a delegation today. Great to meet you all. We have a presentation here. So I'm Rosalie. I'm a project director with Social Planning Cowichan. We just wanted to come here today to introduce ourselves. We haven't made a presentation to electoral areas directors in quite some time. And so wanted to say hello, give you a little background about who we are, what we do, and some of the projects that we've been doing. Next slide, please. Oh, I can do it? On here? Even though it says do not touch. So here's a video of John Horn. He actually was a social planner for the city of Nanaimo back in the day, and then was the executive director of the Cowichan Housing Association, which I'm sure many of you are aware of. But we have a great video of him giving you a good synopsis on what social planning is.
It's that make a community gel together. So what are the relationships between the people in the community? What is the relationships between the different economic stratums in the community and the different social groups or the different ethnic groups? So social planning looks at all those aspects of the human relations within a community and looks at how do we support a vibrant, healthy, engaged community to emerge from that.
So I made the joke in the town of Ladysmith that we don't do weddings.
That make
it's more about that type of work. And then I have Candace Spilsbury here, who used to be the chair of the School District 79 before retiring, and she actually was our founding chair of Social Planning Cowichan and gives a good synopsis of how that began.
Proud of being part of Social Planning Cowichan from its initiation. I believe the year was 2004, that after a community process of 2 years of developing the organization, there was a search for directors, and I responded to that call and chaired the organization for 10 years. And during that time, so much work was completed that was absolutely instrumental to moving forward in the community on issues like the housing, childcare, cultural connections, status of the community report, which was the first report that this community received way back when. And they're still involved in working on that. Visions 2020 was accepted from Community Futures, so that is part of what work Social Planning Cowichan continues to do. The NAG Games passed on the vision for the Cultural Connections work. So I'm very proud of this organization. It's done tremendous work for this community and continues to do so.
So Social Planning Cowichan does have a history of creating projects based on need in the community and then kind of moving those projects along. Often they become their own organizations. The Cowichan Housing Association is a perfect example of that, where we started a housing kind of coalition in the area, and that after 8 years evolved into its own organization. Some of the projects that we do regularly annually as part of our core funding, which we are a function of the CVRD, so we do get $50,000 a year as part of our core funding. The status of the community reports that Candace mentioned are now what we call community snapshots. So those are updated with the census and then annually with data that we can find in between. We calculate the living wage every year. For 2022, it was $23.53 based on a family of 4 with 2 full-time working parents. And we just saw today that BC will be improving our minimum wage up to $16.75, I believe, which is a great improvement, but we still have a way to go for actual living wage. And then we participate on various community tables as well, just to, again, bring research and information that we know is happening in the community, and also to keep our pulse on what's happening and identify those gaps and work together within the community with other organizations. But everything else we do is based on grants. So I'll show you some of our other work as well. Some of our featured projects we wanted to share with you. So we've been working on 2 poverty reduction strategies, one with the town of Lake Cowichan. It's called Moving On Up, Cowichan Lake Poverty Reduction Project. And then one with the town of Ladysmith and with Stamanis as well in partnership. And that's the Community Together to End Poverty, Huanatswalam, which is a Hulkaminam word meaning as one. And I'll just play through this as I talk about it, just some photos to share with you here. So in the town of Lake Cowichan, we'll be hosting our second event. Actually, it's a free store, so we accept donations from the community and then offer it for free for those who need. And then always with any event that we're hosting, we bring in community groups together to really share resources of what's available and try to break down that stigma with people accessing those resources. We heard a lot of that when we did the strategies from the community, that people in need are often feel stigmatized or uncomfortable accessing them, or they just don't know they exist. So really trying to bring people together around services, around the issues in their local communities, and then bringing people together around making food together. So in Lake Cowichan or Ladysmith as well, we hosted 2 film nights, we hosted 2 cultural workshops, and then a neighbors sharing food event we did a week and a half ago, 2 Saturdays ago. Again, just bringing community together, understanding those issues, and then sharing those resources and creating that dialogue and momentum around poverty and what it looks like locally. Another big part of our work is Cultural Connections, which is actually becoming its own organization, just similar to the Cowichan Housing Association. This was born out of the North American Indigenous Games that happened in 2008. A lot of cultural work was put in to bring Indigenous and non-Indigenous residents together to get ready for those games, and the elders who worked on that really wanted to move that forward. So I've got a great video here that kind of gives you the synopsis and evolution of that. Move my mouse here.
We had formed a committee called the Walk of the Nations Festival, and we needed a home. Basically, the Walk of the Nations existed for one time during the North American Indigenous Games, but there was that sort of desire and need in the community to continue on that cultural connection work. So social planning became our home. They accepted us, they welcomed us, and from that grew a number of programs, a number of workshops, and I think provided a real service that was needed in the community. There was a gap there, and so rather than it being a local government or a business or a corporation or somebody that may not necessarily be the right person to lead that charge, social planning became the facilitator, the advocate, and became the home for that type of cultural connection work.
Reconciliation is it's still a very difficult word for me.
Like one of our elders says, it's a big word. It is a big word. Even when it first started coming out, I had to look it up on dictionary. What does it mean? So I got to understand, yeah, I need to reconcile with myself.
First, that thing that comes to mind is working together.
We ask for workshops and presentations about reconciliation.
I think we have to be vigilant and go do these workshops. There's not the answer by one voice coming out of me or anybody else. There's not that answer. It takes a whole clump of each one of us coming together and making that work.
I don't want to wish for something that we no longer exists. I want to imagine something that we can create. And I don't know what the word is for that. But it's not decolonization. We can't. We're all colonized. We can't decolonize. We can unwind some things, but more than that, we can imagine something. We can use that wisdom to imagine something new.
Today we won't get those answers. Maybe 20 years we might from now. But at least we're bringing it out.
So you saw in some of those photos there of area directors, past and present, who participated in some of our Cowichan 101 tours around the region with some of the neighboring nations. So they showed us parts of the land. Some of them were out on water, some of them were in the forests, some were developments that were happening within those nations. And then we also had photos of Cushintal, which took place at the Samana Big House in 2018, and that was to gather together before that election to share commitments on working together moving forward before that election. We hope to do that again this fall, all funding dependent. And then I'll play. So the originator of Cultural Connections after the Walk of Nations was our Journey of Our Generation workshops. And so the elders coming into retirement and wanting to be safe during COVID months, or the COVID years, I guess, really wanted to develop a legacy project, and that was Thait. And Thait means truth in Hulkaminam. And so you're seeing some photos of that there. It took place last September into October. Over 3,000 people attended it in about a 3-week period, and it's a multimedia exhibit that happened at the community center in the art gallery. So we had just had a place where you could walk through and really experience kind of what physically and emotionally and mentally, with lots of information, lots of videos, etc., to really go through that colonization experience that we do at the workshops. And so phase 2 of that will be to host that in other areas. Salt Spring Island and Thetis Island is interested in hosting it, and we'll look at another location here as well. Another legacy project that the elders are really looking forward to is the Cedar Legacy Project. Pei is Cedar in Hulkaminam. And there are a number of pieces in development for this second project, and it includes planting 3,000 cedar trees in honor of children who didn't return from residential schools. So the team spent 1 year going through protocols required to begin this work, and had our first planting of 250 trees with the George family last year in Bright Angel Park. And this project is urgent due to cedar's vulnerability to climate change. Research is being done right now to identify areas to plant and also rebuild healthy ecosystems for cedar to thrive, while establishing mechanisms for protecting cedar, existing cedar for harvesting for future generations. A few weeks ago, we also hosted a cedar forum up in Lake Cowichan where people could share information about cedar, and also as part of a development of an advisory group to carry on these groups, or to carry on this work and the goals of the Legacy Project. I'm almost done, I promise. In case I've hit 10 minutes, I'm sorry.
But we wanted people to know our history so we could work together. We can't work together if we don't understand each other. That's what kept coming out.
So that's Lucy Thomas, one of the elders we work with, who's very wise and just talks a lot about working together and how important that is, and understanding the history and the culture of where we live as well. And then I've just listed some of our into the future projects that we're really looking forward to continuing with grant funding, and happy to answer any questions. Thank you for your time.
Thank you so much, Rosalie. Any questions? Director Salmon, alternate Director Salmon.
Thank you, Rosalie. Excellent. I like all the films, even the one that I was not in. Is there an advocacy aspect to social planning, Cowichan? Do you also lobby senior levels of government, or?
No, not generally. We have everything is grant based that we do, other than the 50,000 from the CVRD. So we don't do a lot of advocacy. It's mostly boots on the ground, grassroots work.
Okay, thank you.
I'm just going to stop and remind everyone, our microphones don't work very well now, so we have to get right in there.
And Madam Chair, can you
Yes.
ask people to turn on their camera, because I don't even know who's in this meeting. I can see 3 other directors, that's it.
Right, and I should probably introduce people because some people are not on camera because they're alternate directors. So alternate director Barry Marcotte is in for Ben Martman today, and alternate director Ken Olive is in for Director Abbott today, and alternate director Blaise Salmon is in for Kate Segal, and we also have Karen Deck and Jesse McClinton here, but no one else. And you. Ian's missing, and he didn't send an alternate, and Mike Wilson is missing. He did not send an alternate, or his alternate couldn't make it. So that's who's here today. Okay? Any more questions for Rosalie?
Can I make one plug before I leave? Sorry.
Sure.
We are doing a Journey of Our Generation workshop in Cobble Hill on May 4th for anyone who'd like to join. And we'll send an email out with registration details on that as well.
Thank you. Those are really worth going to, folks, if you haven't done it. Thanks so much for coming.
Great, thank you.
Yeah. All right, next up, correspondence.
Yes, we have correspondence C1, grant and aid request, Electoral Area C, Cobble Hill, Reeve Francis Kelsey Secondary School. And the recommendation is that it be recommended to the board that a grant and aid Electoral Area C, Cobble Hill, in the amount of $1,000 be provided to Francis Kelsey Secondary School for 5 $200 bursaries for 5 graduating students that reside in Electoral Area C, Cobble Hill, to support their future education or training.
Do I have a mover? I have a mover. Someone seconded it and seconded it. All in favor? Anyone opposed? Motion's carried.
Thank you. We have 6. So C2 is grant and aid request Electoral Area D, Cowichan Bay, Recowichan Secondary School. The recommendation is that it be recommended to the board that a grant and aid Electoral Area D, Cowichan Bay, in the amount of $1,000 be provided to Cowichan Secondary School for 2 $500 bursaries for 2 graduating students that reside in Electoral Area D, Cowichan Bay, to support their future education or training.
So moved, and a second. All in favor? Motion's carried.
Thank you. C3 is a grant and aid request, Electoral Area D, Cowichan Bay, Reeve Francis Kelsey Secondary School. Recommendation is that it be recommended to the board that a grant and aid Electoral Area D, Cowichan Bay, in the amount of $1,000 be provided to Francis Kelsey Secondary School for 2 $500 bursaries for 2 graduating students that reside in Electoral Area D, Cowichan Bay, to support their future education or training.
Thank you. And it's moved and seconded. All in favor? Anyone opposed? Motion carried.
C4 is a grant and aid request, Electoral Area D, Cowichan Bay, Reeve Francis Kelsey Graduation Committee. The recommendation is that it be recommended to the board that a grant and aid Electoral Area D, Cowichan Bay, in the amount of $500 be provided to Francis Kelsey Graduation Committee to assist in providing the 2023 graduates a safe, alcohol and drug-free environment to celebrate their graduation.
And it's moved and seconded, and all in favor? Anyone opposed? Motion carried.
C5 is a grant and aid request, Electoral Area D, Cowichan Bay, Cowichan Regional Visitor Center. Recommendation is that it be recommended to the board that a grant and aid Electoral Area D, Cowichan Bay, in the amount of $1,000 be provided to the Cowichan Regional Visitor Center to support the year-round visitor servicing operations of the Cowichan Regional Visitor Center.
And it's moved and seconded. All in favor? Anyone opposed? Motion's carried.
C6 is a grant and aid request, Electoral Area D, Cowichan Bay, Recowichan Lake and River Stewardship Society. And the recommendation is that it be recommended to the board that a grant and aid, Electoral Area D, Cowichan Bay, in the amount of $1,000 be provided to the Cowichan Lake River and Stewardship Society to assist in the production and marketing of a full-color coffee table book about the Cowichan River ecosystem and its stewardship.
And it's moved and seconded. All in favor? Anyone opposed? Motion's carried. Area D was a big spender today. All right, moving down to the next thing, and I should say that all of these things will be coming to the board for consideration on April 12th. Carry on.
Number 7, information. IN 1, we have 3 items. Electoral Area A, Mill Bay Malahat Advisory Planning Commission minutes, March 9, 2023. 2, Electoral Area C, Cobble Hill Advisory Planning Commission minutes, March 16, 2023. And number 3, Electoral Area F, Cowichan Lake South, Scotts Falls Advisory Planning Commission minutes of March 27th. And those are all for information.
Anyone have questions or? Nope. All right, let's move on.
Excellent. Number 8 is reports. R1 is a report from the Development Services Division, reapplication number DVP 23I01 for 11586 Ubo Road, PID 000224201. And the recommendation is that the development variance permit be issued.
We have staff here. Mr. Buchan, right?
Brown.
Brown, oh. Mr. Brown, welcome.
Thank you. Thank you, Chair and Directors, for the opportunity to present application DVP 23I01. Before you, for your consideration, is a development variance permit. And it's a request to vary the interior side parcel line setback from 3 meters to 2.72 meters for a residential accessory building at 11586 Ubo Road. The application is already under building permit. The applicant has constructed a single-story accessory building on the subject property and had all the appropriate permits in place. However, upon completion of the survey, it was revealed that the structure encroached within the interior parcel line setback by 0.28 meters. The building permit is otherwise in good standing, and all other development approvals and processes were followed. And in staff's opinion, building staff's opinion, that they'll be ready to issue if this variance is approved, the final occupancy. The neighboring parcels are of similar size, and there are no anticipated negative impacts of granting the variance. As such, staff are recommending approval of the development's variance permit. Thank you, Chair, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Brown. Is the applicant here?
I am not aware if they are.
Okay. Any questions for Mr. Brown? No questions. Turn to the director of the area. Move the recommendation. Perfect. And a seconder. Any discussion? All in favor? Anyone opposed? Motion carried. Thank you.
R2 is a report from the Development Services Division, reapplication number DVP 23I02, and that's for 10690 Lake Boulevard, PID 023012676. And the recommendation is that the, recommended to the board that the development variance permit be issued.
Mr. Brown, again, welcome.
Thank you, Chair. And this application is very similar to the last. Presented to you is a development variance permit request to vary the interior side parcel line setback from 3 meters to 2.8 meters, and the maximum permitted height from 6 meters to 6.3 meters for a residential accessory building, which is a garage located at 10690 Lake Boulevard. Similar to the last application, the applicant has constructed an accessory building under building permit. Upon completion of a survey, it was revealed that the building height is 0.3 meters over the allowable maximum height for an accessory building. In addition, this structure encroaches within the interior parcel line setback by 0.2 meters. The building division has advised that the building permit is ready to be finalized upon the receipt of a development variance permit. Both the variance requests are relatively minor, and the building is in the same approximate location as a similar building that was there previously, both in siting and form. The appropriate development approvals have been obtained for the structure, and as such, staff are recommending approval of the development variance permit. And Chair, I do believe the applicant intended to be here today, but I'm not sure if they are here.
Is the applicant here? I am here. Would you like to add anything?
No, I'm going to leave it up to Tyler. He's done a wonderful job.
Thank you.
And very supportive.
All right, any questions for Mr. Brown? Turn to Director Deck.
With the recommendations.
Sorry? Oh, just hang on a second, because Director Acton has a question. Director Acton.
Thank you. Well, I think it would probably be a question for the approving officer. This variance seems so minor that I can't see why it came to us. Like, so I feel like I'm missing something. Like this. Where's the kind of like gray line here that it ended up at our table, I guess, is what I'm asking, because doesn't the approving officer generally
have some discretion?
give these variances? Yes, thank you.
Chair, through you to the Director. It's only recently that through legislative changes to the Local Government Act that variances could be delegated to staff or another body. At this time, the CVRD does not have that delegation in place. If that is something that the board wishes to entertain, absolutely staff could provide a report on options. And Michelle may have more information in that regard. But as it stands now, the board is the approving authority for development variance permits. Michelle.
Welcome.
Thanks. I just wanted to follow up that I understand that the general manager of land use services will be preparing a report with potential options to amendments to the development procedures bylaw regarding delegation of variances.
Great, thank you. Director McClinton.
Since we're going down this line, do we not have a board of variance that would handle this?
Yeah, so the Board of Variance is an option for any applicant comes forward. They essentially, under the Local Government Act, the way it's worded is if you have a zoning bylaw, you must have a Board of Variance, in which the CVRD does. That decision to go with a development variance permit through electoral area directors to the board, or to go to the independent Board of Variance body is at the discretion of the applicant.
I move the recommendation.
Thank you. And it's seconded. Any more discussion? All in favor? Anyone opposed? Motion's carried. Thank you.
R3 is a report from the Development Services Division, reapplication number ALR 22A01 for 3280 Trans-Canada Highway, PID 003027147. And the recommendation is that it be recommended to the board that the application number ALR 22A01 3280 Trans-Canada Highway, PID 027147 be forwarded to the Agricultural Land Commission for consideration with recommendation for approval.
Thank you. Ms. Boyle, you're up.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So presented before you is a non-farm use application to the Agricultural Land Commission, the ALC, for property 3280 Trans-Canada Highway. So the subject property is located in Mill Bay, immediately west of the Trans-Canada Highway, and the property falls within the Agricultural Land Reserve, is designated Renewable Resource Agriculture in the OCP, and is zoned A1 Agricultural Resource 1. Under the ALR use regulation, an abattoir is considered a farm use that may not be prohibited by local government, provided that at least 50% of the poultry originates from the subject property. The applicant is currently in the process of constructing an abattoir on the property for poultry processing as a farm use. An abattoir that processes more than 50% of the poultry from off-site farms is considered by the ALC to be commercial and industrial, and a non-farm use application is required. So that is what the property owner is intending to do by this non-farm use application. The staff report that's in your hands includes the relevant OCP policies and ALR use regulations, and analysis on the proposed use in the context of the OCP. I should also note that this application is associated with a rezoning application, which will be the next application on your agenda. Staff considered the proposed non-farm use application to meet the intention of the OCP policies and goals, and as such are recommending that the application be forwarded to the ALC with a recommendation for approval. Thank you.
Thank you. Is the applicant here? Would you
Yes, he is.
Would you like to add anything?
You can go now or later.
Is this where I say the little blurb about?
If you want.
Okay, sure.
Please come speak into the mic.
Yeah, hi. Hi, how are you?
Welcome.
So I guess this has to do with the ALC application. So I was hoping that the board would put a motion forward or such, I'm not sure how this works, to request the ALC to expedite their decision so that we don't lose another year of poultry growing, because it is a seasonal thing. So by the time the ALC would get back, it would be late September, potentially. So I guess this is where I would ask that. So I don't really know how to word it.
Thank you. So let me turn to the planners and what can be done about this if we were going
Sure.
to pass this. Is that
So-
something that we could consider?
Anyway, my thoughts on this were that I would not recommend this in my staff report, but that the applicant could request this, and if the board was interested, or the CVRD board or the Electoral Area Services Committee were interested, they could pass a motion to recommend that the ALC expedite the application. Whether the ALC will take that recommendation into consideration or not, I don't know, but I thought it more appropriate that it come from the applicant as opposed to from staff.
Okay, well, let's deal with the motion we've got on the, actually, we haven't got it on the table. Shall I turn to the alter, yeah.
Yeah, well, I can move the recommendation.
Speak right into your mic.
I would like to
Please.
move the recommendation, but I would also like to add the expedited request if appropriate to, should that be a separate?
You could add it into this right now?
Yeah, I could just, with the addition of the request to the ALR to please expedite this.
Do I have a seconder? I have a seconder. Are we clear on the motion? Any discussion? All in favor? Anyone opposed? Motion's carried. So that will go to the board April 12th for final look. Moving on.
R4 is a report from the Development Services Division, reapplication number RZ22A03 for 3280 Trans-Canada Highway, PID 003027147. It's a three-part recommendation. Did you want me to read it?
How about if we hear from Ms. Boyle first? Yep.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So presented before you is a rezoning application for 3280 Trans-Canada Highway, the same property as the previous application. The property falls within the Agricultural Land Reserve and is designated Renewable Resource Agriculture in the OCP, and the property is zoned A1 Agricultural Resource 1. So in this application, which is a rezoning, the applicant is proposing a new site-specific use of poultry processing on the property. This would allow the owner to process more than 50% of the poultry from off-site farms. The use is considered commercial or industrial in nature in our zoning bylaw and not considered to fall under the use of agriculture. As you are aware from the previous application, a non-farm use application to the ALC is being processed concurrently. In the report for this application, I've gone over the external referrals that have been received and highlighted the relevant OCP policies as well as regulations around water, servicing, wastewater, and solid waste management at the provincial level. Staff consider the proposed application meets the policies and intention of the OCP, of the OCP, period. The proposed zoning amendment bylaw attached to the staff report consists of a site-specific regulation in the A1 zone in the South Cowichan zoning bylaw to allow for poultry processing as a principal permitted use on the property. The owner is also proposing to use portable shipping containers as an economical way for refrigeration and poultry hatchery purposes, and the zoning amendment would permit the accessory use of portable containers as accessory agricultural structures. The recommendation before you is that the referral responses be accepted, the draft zoning amendment bylaw be forwarded to the board for consideration of first and second reading, and that a public hearing be scheduled for the draft zoning amendment bylaw with directors for area A, B, and C as delegates.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So would you like to add anything more?
Not really, I mean, yeah, it's all.
Okay, thank you. I'll turn to the Director Salmon.
Yeah, I'd like to move the recommendation, please.
And do I have a seconder? I have it seconded. Any questions, discussion? Yep.
Just curious, where, maybe I missed it in here, where's the poultry coming from? Where's the,
Sure, yeah, and Tom can better answer this, but currently, under the use as a farm use, at least 50% of the poultry would have to come from on-site or a tethered farm that is leased or owned by the owner, and then 50% could come from off-site farms. But if it's a commercial or industrial use, then that number could vary, and I believe the owner is intending to receive poultry from small poultry processors across Cowichan, but potentially in Nanaimo and Victoria greater areas as well.
perfect.
Yeah.
I hope he'll do my chickens. All right, so we've got a motion on the table, and any more discussion? Alternate Director Marcotte. Eat that microphone.
I think there's a real need for this, and I'm 100% for it.
Thank you. Anyone else? All right. All in favor? Anyone opposed? Motion's carried. R5.
Thank you. R5 is a report from the Development Services Division, reapplication number RZ22A02 for 3265 Telegraph Road, PID 008145067. And it is also a three-part recommendation.
Ms. Boyle, please go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Yes, this is my application as well, and then I will be done. Presented before you is a zoning amendment for the property 3265 Telegraph Road, or proposed zoning amendment, I guess. The subject property is located in Area A, fronts Telegraph Road to the west and Pemberton Road to the south. The property is designated renewable resource agriculture and zoned A1 agricultural resource 1 zone. The property is also within the agricultural land reserve. Currently, the property is used both for agricultural and residential purposes. And there's an ortho photo of the property just for interest if you guys want to see the property. Maybe next slide. Yeah, so you can see the residential side to the west, and then the remainder of the property is an agricultural field that's used for hay, for growing hay. The owner of the property is applying for a zoning amendment to change the property from the A1 zone to the A2, specifically to allow for an accessory dwelling unit on the property. The proposed accessory dwelling unit would be used for an immediate family member. Staff consider the proposed zoning amendment to be minor and to meet the intention of the OCP and ALR regulations by supporting flexibility and diversity of housing in the region. And staff believe that the accessory dwelling unit will not impede the ability to farm the property in the future. So as such, the recommendation is on the next slide. Yeah, and so the referral responses be accepted, the zoning amendment bylaw be forwarded to the board for first and second reading. And in this case, because the zoning amendment bylaw is relatively minor, staff are recommending that a public hearing not be held, and instead public notice occur in accordance with the Local Government Act and the Severity Procedures bylaw.
Thank you. Does anyone have any questions? Director Salmon.
Yeah, thank you. So I'm in support of this, but just a general question first for staff. I noticed a little section in the report there about the home plate regulations that I think are a good idea. And I'm wondering, do we need a motion if we wanted that to be part of OCP discussions, or is that just understood?
That's a good question, whether we need a separate motion it might be better directed in the zoning bylaw, home plate regulations, if I'm not mistaken. Perhaps Mr. Tippett or Ms. Pressman would be able to answer about what the best motion is for, no?
Yes, if you could repeat the question, that would be helpful. I was doing other work at the time, and I was unable to hear what you were asking.
Yeah, the staff report has a little section about home plate.
Yes.
Sort of requirements that other jurisdictions have that we apparently do not have, which essentially it sort of clumps the residential part of footprint of an agricultural property, so.
And the question, I presume, was, is the zoning project going to be looking at that as a sort of systematic approach throughout the region? The short answer is yes. I'm not sure what we'll recommend yet, but that's something that is probably a good idea.
Okay.
So sorry for the...
No worries. My question actually, do we need a separate motion for that, or is that understood that that'll?
Well, it's going to occur as a matter of course in the zoning project is what I'm saying. So, if it's a matter of some urgency, I suppose the committee could, ask for a special report on it, but it will be happening sooner or later in the course of doing our work.
I just have a little bit to add. I just wanted to add also that the Strategic Initiatives Division is bringing forth a report on some agricultural policy and regulation review that's been conducted as part of the OCP process as well. So that will be coming within the next couple months, I believe.
Great.
And will provide further direction for the zoning bylaw.
Okay, that sounds adequate. Thank you.
Thank you. Any more questions, discussion? We have a...
So I'd like to move the recommendation.
Okay, and it's seconded. And all in favor? Anyone opposed? Motion's carried. All right.
Okay, R6 is a report from the Development Services Division, reapplication number RZ21C02, Hutchison Road, PID 006906401. And the recommendation is that it be recommended to board that the application number RZ21C02, Hutchison Road, PID 006906401, be referred to external agencies as outlined in the staff report to the April 5, 2023 Electoral Area Services Committee meeting.
Thank you. Welcome, Ms. Dubinia. Okay.
Thank you, Madam Chair. You're under the spotlight when I'm in person. So this application before you is for a bylaw amendment to redesignate the subject property. Next slide, please. Thank you. From rural residential to village residential in the official community plan, or OCP, and to rezone the parcel from rural residential to, which is RR2, to a comprehensive development zone. The application also includes an amendment to Schedule G in the OCP to include the subject property in the Cobble Hill Growth Containment Boundary. Current zoning, of the parcel permits a minimum parcel size of 2 hectares for subdivision. The proposal would be similar to an existing zone in the South Cowichan zoning bylaw, CD10, with varying lot sizes for single, double, and multi-family dwelling use, all of which require connection to community water and sewer. The slide in front of you is the attached conceptual site plan, and the applicant has provided a proposed CD zone, which is found in attachment E of the staff report. Staff are working with the applicant regarding voluntary community amenity contributions to complete a connector trail on Verner Road between Hutchinson and the developed portion of Verner to the north, so sort of just above the property. And next slide, please. Staff are recommending option 1, which is to proceed with referrals to the listed external agencies provided in the staff report.
Thank you. Any questions? Is the applicant here? Would you like to add anything? Welcome.
Madam Chair. So we've done a lot of work on this property the last little while. Cobble Hill Water, we've been talking with them. They have applied to have it brought into the water boundary. It would have been brought in the fall. However, they had one last question regarding it. So it's supposed to be being brought into the water boundary within the next, I think, couple of weeks. They meet twice a year, fall and spring. We've also done a preliminary storm water management plan to make sure the property is sufficient for stormwater and making sure that we replenish the water back into the system. We also had a Madrone do a wildlife riparian report, and we followed all the recommendations of that report. And basically our plan has followed the setbacks that have been given in that document. I'm looking forward to seeing the active transportation plan and the trail network system throughout the area, and we are willing to contribute to that fund. I've been in communications with the Malahat First Nation Band, and I'll be meeting with them over the next couple of weeks prior to referrals going out, just to go over the whole project in general. The overall plan really is to have some smaller lots, some bigger lots, and be able to create housing for all kind of needs for the community. And I think it'll fit quite well. It'll be something similar to what you see in Twin Cedars. And my understanding, talking with engineering at CVRD, is that the Twin Cedars sewage is under capacity, and would like to see some additional capacity to it. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, any questions? Director Acton.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I guess I'm confused. The burner connection, trail connection, is it only just being discussed, or is there a contribution? I heard the applicant say he was giving a contribution. So could I just have some clarity around the connectivity portion of it and amenity contribution?
Yep, staff.
Through the chair to Director Acton. So the applicant has been in conversation with staff regarding a financial contribution to help pay for the completion of the undeveloped portion of that path. Does that help? More details will be provided in a staff report later on.
So my understanding is we're right at the beginning of a process of taking a look at this application, rezoning application. Is that right?
Sorry, repeat that question.
So this is a fairly significant rezoning application, and we're really at the beginning of the process. So the question today is whether we proceed to referral agencies and start to dig in a little deeper on things like the contributions and so forth. Is that correct?
Through the chair, yep. So this is the preliminary staff report for this rezoning. And at the time of the staff report, there wasn't any further details to potential amenity contributions. But since that time, we've been in discussion with Parks about their needs, and the applicant has expressed his agreement to a financial contribution to complete that trail. Does that answer?
Yep, thank you.
Okay, sure.
Yeah, so further information on that would be brought back to the committee upon with the staff report for consideration of the actual bylaw after the referral process.
Right, thank you. Is that okay, Director Acton?
Well, so can you just clarify the portion that's going to be completed, is that where Verner Road ends and goes to another property, or is it alongside where this development is going to happen?
Okay, I can, through the chair to Director Acton, I can try to explain without a map in front of me. But so this property is on the corner of Hutchinson and Verner. Verner's a dead end to the south. Across Hutchinson to the north is an undeveloped portion of Verner that is identified as a potential trail to be developed by Parks and Trails. I think I provided a link in the staff report to the exact map. And so that contribution would be for completing that path. So right now it's sort of just a dirt path with bushes and grass and trees, and it's not developed at all. So this would finish that, would basically create like a developed trail through there that connects with Verner to the north that is developed and is actually the road.
Director Acton.
Thank you. That's clear. Way that I look at rezonings is this is our opportunity to like really make things better instead of trying to improve them later. So I look at the conceptual plan and I see, and so there's a few things that really stand out to me in Cobble Hill that are an issue, or like for all of us, is the connectivity and safety walking on the roads. So I don't see a way for to cut through this development. It's quite a large development. It's going to be it's a large forested lot. It's going to be pretty much cleared, and to not be able to cut across in some way safely for kids and people to get off the roads, I think it looks like it could be incorporated in the design plans. And I'm curious about the wetland area, why it was never discussed as perhaps in that way, as a park, as a centerpiece or a showcase, so that a trail could cut through across this development and get people off the roads.
Through the chair to Director Acton. So the wetland, there's, as far as I understand, no interest in parks taking that over. It's not it's not large. Again, discussing with the applicant, potentially registering a covenant on title to protect it. And that would be, I think that's mentioned as well in the staff report. But as for connecting along, I'm assuming you mean along Hutchinson Road? Is that correct?
Just getting people off the roads and trying to cut through different neighborhoods, and that's what that's what we're all trying to accomplish.
Right. So
that you can go through up to Hutchinson, or below Verner is going to be developed eventually someday too, probably. So just being able to cut through neighborhoods instead of being forced to go around them, and where we have no sidewalks and very unsafe roads.
Right. So again, through the chair to Director Acton, Hutchinson Road has a somewhat large shoulder. I've walked it. It is there's an actual marked sidewalk along that portion of Hutchinson. To the south, where Verner is now a dead end, is a private parcel, and that's if that hasn't been discussed with those property owners, they're not part of this application. So potentially we could go back to the applicant and talk about creating a trail along the south boundary of this parcel, if that's what you're meaning for connecting. But that's, that hasn't been discussed. We go by the plans that we receive, or that parks have, and they've identified the trail to the north as a priority. There isn't one to the south of this parcel at this point.
Thank you. Any more discussion, questions? Whose is this? Hutchinson. Oh, yes, we don't have anyone here to move this from that area. Would you like to move it, Director Salmon?
Maybe I'll just comment first. I'm just looking at that park's proposed future trail connections, and just sort of like to agree with Director Acton and say maybe the other that you mentioned, the trail to the south, if that could be explored perhaps as well. I think that would be worthwhile, because I agree there's some difficulty with connections, especially in Cobble Hill. So you can do that. That's great. And that said, I'd like to move the recommendation.
So just for clarification from staff, so does it make sense for us to refer it back, for this to be further discussed with the applicant before we move it forward anymore, or should we move it forward and you will discuss this with the applicant?
through the chair. If you're asking me, I say the second option. But I mean, at this point, external referrals would just, you know, that starts that process. It can be a little bit lengthy. While we send those out, we can converse with the applicant about this option. I have included the Area C Parks Advisory Commission on as an external agent to be referred to. So, you know, potentially, I would probably go back to Parks and see if there's desire to do that as well.
Okay, so is that okay? Do we have a seconder then? We have a seconder. Any more discussion? So it's pretty clear, I guess, that the committee is interested in connectivity in our communities. If you, can you come up to the mic?
So my understanding, they were still waiting to see a finished active transportation plan, or is that being completed already?
Good question.
Okay. So my understanding was that we're waiting to see still the active transportation plan. Has that been completed yet?
Ms. Pressman?
We're expecting the final draft this week, so there will be follow-up on that, yep.
Perfect.
Yeah, so I've been talking to staff about that and also with Mike Wilson. And upon receiving that and then also finalizing more of the trail system for the area, that would be something that we'll be working on for sure.
Okay.
The only thing that I'm a little concerned about, and I know that some people, other people are, when you start having little walkways within subdivisions, in people's rear yards, you're kind of creating these dark spaces, and they're not always secure and safe. But there's been that concern before too, with inside subdivisions. But I do understand, we do want a nice trail system throughout the property.
Right.
I'm also involved with the Gallier Road subdivision, which we're just waiting for a final PLR on from Highways. So I'm quite involved with the local network system.
Okay, thank you. All right, so anything more, committee? We're all good? So do I have a, all in favor? Anyone opposed? Motion's carried. All right, moving into water management.
R7 is a report from the Water Management Division, Water Management Amendment Bylaw number 4474. Recommendation is that it be recommended to the board that bylaw number 4474, Water Systems Regulatory and Management Amendment Bylaw 2023 be considered for 3 readings and adoption.
Welcome, Ms. Thompson.
Thank you. So this bylaw is just to amend some of the rates in the management bylaws per the approved budget for 2023, as well as make some other minor adjustments to the bylaw, including the increased rates, some minimum increases for RV trailer parks, as well as an amendment to the leak forgiveness policy to increase fairness between single-family dwellings and commercial properties, and as well as introduce a rate for homes that are not metered in metered systems.
Thank you. Any questions?
I was just wondering why people refuse water meters.
So in this particular water system, Lambourne Water, it's a newly metered system that we've just started metering in the last year or so. And we took over the existing infrastructure, and in some cases we weren't able to locate where the service meets the property line. And so in some cases we were able to install meters within the houses. In other cases, some people elected not to have those meters installed, and so we chose to go with this route of having a special rate for those homes.
So the reason was?
Simply that they refused to have us come install a meter in their home, and just difficulty around having access to that infrastructure and maintaining it and reading it, and yeah. Hope, with the hope being that, I think it was a relatively small percentage of homes. Yeah, something like, it was relatively small anyways compared to the rest of the properties that we were able to meter, so.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Any other questions? All right, do I have a motion to, you move it? It's moved and seconded. All in favor? Anyone opposed? Motion's carried. How about if we take, before we move into sewer, we'll take a 10-minute break. So back at 1:45. Thank you.
I was always here.
I loved your yellow sweater.
Oh, thank you.
You and Karen look very spring-like.
Sarah, are you feeling better?
Oh, we're alive. No more chit-chat. Welcome back, and we're moving on to sewers.
Thank you, Madam Chair. A report from the, R8 is a report from the Utilities Division, Sewer Systems Management Amendment Bylaw 4475. Recommendation is that it be recommended that, to the board, that bylaw number 4475, Sewer Systems Regulatory and Management Amendment Bylaw 2023 be considered for 3 readings and adoption.
Thank you. Ms. Thompson.
Thank you. Yeah, again, this is just a bylaw amendment to amend some of the user rates as approved previously in the 2023 budget process, as well as include some new classifications in anticipation of additional connections in 2 of the sewer systems.
Thank you. Any questions for Ms. Thompson? No questions? Do I have someone like to move the recommendation? It's moved and seconded. All in discussion? All in favor? Anyone opposed? Motion's carried. R9.
R9 is a report from the Utilities Division, amend bylaw number 2790, Centennial Ridge Sewer System Establishment. The recommendation is 3 parts. Would you like me to read it?
Ms. Thompson, would you like to, do you have anything to say about it before we read it? No? Okay, recommendation.
The recommendation is that it be recommended to the board that 1, the certificate of sufficiency confirming a sufficient petition for inclusion into the Centennial Ridge Sewer System service area for the property described as Holford Road, PID 005-773-679, Lot 8, District Lot 47, Plan 6698, Malahat District be received. 2, that CVRD bylaw number 2790, Centennial Ridge Sewer System Service Establishment Bylaw 2006 be amended to include the property described as Holford Road, PID 005-773-679, Lot 8, District Lot 47, Plan 6698, Malahat District. Number 3, that the amendment to bylaw number 2790 be forwarded to the board for consideration of 3 readings and upon payment of capacity connection fees for adoption.
All right, I'll turn to Alternate Director Salmon to move the recommendation. And a seconder? I've got a seconder. Any questions? All in favor? Anyone opposed? Motion's carried.
R8 is a report from the Utilities Division, amend bylaw number 4205, Cobble Hill Village Sewer Establishment. There is another 3-part recommendation. Would you like me to read it?
Yes, please.
That it be recommended to the board that 1, the certificate of sufficiency confirming a sufficient petition for the inclusion into the Cobble Hill Village Sewer System service area for the property described as 1441 Fisher Road, PID 006-831-231, Lot G, Section 12, Range 6, Plan 1809, except Plan 19424 and EXCPL VIP 51698, Shawnigan District be received. 2, that CVRD bylaw 4205, Cobble Hill Village Sewer System Service Establishment Bylaw 2018 be amended to include the property described as 1441 Fisher Road, PID 006831231, Lot G, Section 12, Range 6, Plan 1809, Accept Plan 19424, and EXC PL VIP 51698, Shawnigan District. And 3, that the amendment to bylaw number 4205 be forwarded to the board for consideration of 3 readings and upon payment of capacity connection fees for adoption.
Do I have a mover and a seconder? Any questions or comments? All in favor? Anyone opposed? Motion's carried.
R11 is a report from the Inspection and Enforcement Division, re BC Energy Step Code, and it's for information.
Should be a very interesting presentation. Welcome.
Thank you, Madam Chair. For those of you that don't know me, I'm, are you going to run this for me, Chase? Great. So for those of you that don't know me, my name's Sonny Brisky. I'm the CVRD's Chief Building Official. We've got a report for you for information today regarding some changes to the BC Building Code that undoubtedly some of the directors may get some feedback from their constituents about. This is something that's fairly new and quite complex, so CVRD will be responsible for administering this starting May 1st. We have some new directors and some alternates today, so we've got a brief presentation just to explain this a little bit. So basically the BC Energy Step Code is a new way of determining whether or not buildings built in the province of BC are performing to an acceptable manner. Excuse me. Basically, the province introduced energy efficiency as a BC Building Code objective in 2008. And ever since, designers and builders have had the opportunity to either meet the building code through a prescriptive method, which is essentially following written instructions, or they could choose a performance-based approach, which is sort of where we're going with mandatory requirements. And that basically means, are all of my elements functioning together as a system and being as efficient as possible? So right now with the prescriptive method, you know, this speaks to a lot of things like windows, doors, mechanical systems and all these things, but that doesn't necessarily mean that all those things working in tandem are essentially going to be working as efficiently as possible. So we're going to be requiring the, next slide here, we're going to be requiring the mandatory performance-based approach moving forward, which essentially means that builders and whom are called energy advisors will be determining ahead of time whether or not a proposed building will be meeting the requirements of the energy code, and they'll be returning during construction to measure whether or not these buildings are meeting the requirements of the building code. So in the one image to the left, it's not, you can't see it so well, but essentially this is software that energy advisors will be using to determine whether or not this proposed building is going to meet the requirements. So this is a relatively new profession. Thankfully, there is going to be a lot of options in our area for people to retain these people. And the image to the right is sort of what the on-site testing is going to look like. This is an energy advisor performing what's called a blower door test. So basically what that is filling a building with negative pressure to determine whether or not it's leaking. If a building is leaking, then it is very difficult to control the environment in a building. So this isn't like the R2000 thing of the past that was a bit of a nightmare. We've ironed that out, so. Where are we here? So basically when we're talking about the things that need to be measured in a building to determine whether or not it's going to meet these requirements. The first thing we look at is the building envelope. These are things like how much insulation is required, the kind of siding that I'm using, windows, doors, things like that. Believe it or not, the way a building is actually going to be sited on the property is going to factor in. So if my windows are letting light in for X hours a day, that may be a benefit. Here on southern Vancouver Island, these things aren't going to be nearly as onerous as they might be in the Peace or the Kootenays or anything like that, but nonetheless, maybe some folks out in, Director Deck's neck of the woods might be looking at something like this, but anyway, the other things that we're going to be testing for are the basically the infrastructure components, things like our furnace, hot water heating, things like that, ventilation. These things need to work in tandem and obviously demand a lot of energy. So if they're not functioning as well as possible, then we can iron that out before we start building. And as I mentioned, the last thing will be the on-site testing. So once the building has been pre-modeled and it's determined that it can be built to the standard, and it has been built to the standard, as we saw in the previous image, an energy advisor will return to the site to, you can see the little blower door, the little red door there, fill the building full of negative pressure and determine whether or not the building envelope is leaking. And we can certainly measure the efficiency of the other equipment, the heating and ventilation equipment, and determine whether or not this as-built building did meet as it was set out to in the preliminary modeling. So right now, I believe Mr. McDonald came and spoke to the committee a number of years ago when this was sort of first in its infancy, and the committee at the time elected to just kind of roll with it. And so that was when steps 1 and 2 were an option. As you can see in the image here, we're at step 3. So basically the province sets these requirements out for levels of energy efficiency and refers to them as steps. And step 3 will be mandatory on the 1st of next month. And I would say that for the most part, the builders in our region are meeting these requirements without the testing. We got a lot of good builders in the valley, so I don't suppose we're going to have too many negative experiences in this respect. But as we continue on, step 4 and step 5 will become mandatory in the next few years, and certainly that will be a little bit more difficult to achieve nonetheless, but it's certainly in the best interest of the community and everyone as we try to take a little bit more pride in building buildings. So step 3 is mandatory May 1st for all building permit applications received. So over time, as the high performance design materials and system become increasingly more available and cost effective, the building industry will integrate new techniques into all new buildings. By 2032, the BC Building Code will move towards the higher steps of the Energy Step Code, as we saw on the last slide, and the National Building Code of Canada is moving in a similar direction by 2030. So this is coming. We've made the public aware. There's a fair bit of information on our website, and the licensed builders in the community have been informed by BC Housing that they'll need to be doing this. So we feel like we're in good shape, but I'm sure there'll be a few hiccups, but we'll get through it. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Brisky. Do we have enough energy advisors?
I absolutely, Madam Chair. There's so on our website, We actually had an energy advisor come in and speak to our staff, and they've given us great resources, and I believe it's Clean BC, the same website where you can get rebates for all your new appliances and things like that. There's actually a bar on finding an energy advisor, and you can click Duncan or Cowichan Valley, Vancouver Island, and quite a comprehensive list of energy advisors pops up with the different services that they provide, as in the preliminary modeling and the on-site testing and things like that. And I was pleasantly surprised when I reviewed it for myself. We are in abundance here on Vancouver Island, and certainly being sandwiched between Victoria and Nanaimo, there really shouldn't be any worry with having contractors retain energy advisors. And I should note too that some of our neighboring districts have elected to allow for voluntary compliance. So I did speak to the builders previously about this, and the feedback that I received from them was good. And so a lot of our builders are ready, and they know it's coming, and they have people on board. So.
Thank you. Any questions? Director Clinton.
Through the chair, yeah, great presentation. Curious about a few things. Didn't get to read your report in a lot of detail, so sorry if I missed something. I'm curious, just thinking about cost, really, just in thinking about in our housing crisis, just estimated costs or increase to a build, like what does that kind of look like?
Through the chair, Director McClinton. The energy advisor that we spoke to quoted $2,000. That was for the upfront modeling and the on-site testing. That said, I think that's your best case scenario. Yeah. The preliminary modeling that's done needs to really be done at the design stage, and certainly if there's a number of back and forth issues with you need to change this or that's not going to work or whatever, then obviously that adds cost. And then when the on-site testing occurs, if there are failures and there needs to be some corrections made, and then the advisor returns for secondary testing, then that can drive the cost. So there probably is going to be a little bit of, like I say, some hiccups for some folks early on until that process has been ironed out. But if anyone ever speaks to you about it, what I would suggest that you tell them is that just to make sure that they really iron it out at the design stage with the drafts person, and then stick to the script.
Follow up if
Yes,
I may.
please.
And just curious, this might be a tough question, but any idea around, and knowing that there'll be some savings on the other end in terms of efficiencies and things like that, but in terms of the materials or things, is it just kind of doubling up stuff, or is there going to be like a stepped increase for, getting these materials into the house?
Through the chair. Well, it all depends, right? Like, if I want to build a big sprawling mansion in, a heavily wooded area, then the modeling might suggest that, we are going to need a little bit more insulation here, or, if we're quite a ways west beyond Cowichan Lake or something where the climate starts to change, then, and I'm right on the water, and perhaps some triple glazed windows or something might be beneficial for you to come into compliance. But where we are, we're in one of the least restrictive climate zones in all of the province. And like I say, I hazard a guess that 99% of our builders are already meeting this standard. They just don't know it because the requirement to prove it via modeling and testing just isn't mandatory. So there might be the odd folk that need to have a little bit something extra, but in the grand scheme of things, I don't imagine it'll be much.
Nice.
Another follow-up.
One last
Please.
follow-up. Yeah. I'm curious, how does it affect like renovations, or like, maybe you're putting on, like, like say a build that's gonna increase the scope or change it by 60%, right? Like, how does it affect, that? Is it just for new builds?
Through the chair. So basically, we have a level of discretion. And certainly, absolutely, all new dwelling units and all new commercial or industrial buildings will need to meet some sort of standard. I actually had a discussion with Colin Bollinger this morning at the town of Ladysmith. He's their building inspector, just about this specifically. And, you know, we use the terms, obviously, new build, but we also use the term substantial reconstruction, right? So substantial reconstruction is a definition that BC Housing gives us, and it essentially means that I'm tearing a building back to the point where I can, you know, manipulate these details, or I'm otherwise increasing the size of a dwelling beyond a certain threshold. It's actually beyond 60%. So obviously, if somebody puts a little bump out on the side of their house, you know, we can't test for that, we can't model for that, and it's, you know, it's unrealistic to expect these people to take that route. So the building code does provide for some discretion in that regard, and we still do have those prescriptive requirements for those things, so we can still require that the adequate insulation and windows and all those things are installed. And so yes, to answer your question, there's allowances for that.
So I have Director Acton and Director Deck next. Okay. Director Acton.
Thank you. Thanks, Sunny. Good presentation. You made it really clear and easy to understand. I guess, well, actually, to Director Nicholson, I think there's lots of people doing this kind of work, because in the municipalities where I've lived, you could get testing of your old house and improve the energy. And they would give you a report and a whole bunch of ways to, so they did that door thing. Anyway, it was kind of neat. You could reduce your energy pretty easily by doing a few minor things. But I guess I'm wondering, where is water in all of this? Are we becoming more strict on, you know, the types of toilets you're using and sinks and water consumption? Like, are we making any progress in that department? Because I know in the south, well, and actually I guess northwestern and those places too, but we have a shortage of water. So where does that kind of fit?
Thank you, Director Acton. So through the chair, so with regard to the energy step code, we can regulate the energy that goes into heating the water. The volume of water that's delivered through fixtures is a prescriptive requirement found in the plumbing code, the brother of the building code, if you will. And those requirements have been recently amended as well to make it, you know, the delivery of water is dramatically less. The rate at which it's delivered is less. You know, if you go into a brand new building anywhere and, you know, use the public washroom, you probably notice that everything's automatic and it, you know, shuts off after a few seconds and only delivers so much water. The one thing we need to be cognizant in that respect is that when the plumbing code dictates how much water fixtures are to deliver, you know, be it a basin or a water closet or anything like that, CSA manufacturers are meeting those requirements. So, you know, it's very difficult to obtain other fixtures and things like that that deliver less because manufacturers just don't build them. So I guess to answer your question, Director Acton, there are separate requirements for that, and they have been amended and made more strict. And I imagine as we progress through more iterations of the plumbing code that we'll see those tighten up even further.
Director Deck.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thanks for your report. I'm wondering if there'll be any new regulations in this step of the step code regarding fossil fuel heating and cooling, or if it's going electric, or how that's going to work.
So through the chair, Director Deck, we have an option coming to further impose restrictions on greenhouse gases. In the report, I believe it's mentioned near the end, the zero carbon step code, formerly known as the carbon pollution standard. However, as the building code continues to go through amendments, these requirements will become mandatory, just like the step code is now. We do also regulate greenhouse gas emissions through a development permit area in some of our more densely industrial commercial zones. That is a requirement as well. But as for right now, I would suggest that, you know, if we were presented with an application for a new building where some of those things were an eyebrow raiser, that it would really fall into the modeling, where if the energy consumption or the carbon output exceeded the parameters, then design changes would just need to be made to bring it under.
I guess I need to study this more then. So tell me,
Go ahead, please.
Can you tell me about the industrial area restrictions that you talked about?
Through the chair, I think that might be a more appropriate conversation to have with the planning department. I believe we have an industrial development permit area that does regulate greenhouse gas emissions. Obviously, that's fairly new with the new OCP and whatnot. But I suspect that I will hear from the province in due course about some of these options to regulate this through building regulations as well.
Thanks very much.
You're welcome.
So I think, Director Deck, that in the past, the board in their strategic conversations have not elected to do more than what is the province is requiring on the energy step code. So we're just, it's starting in, step 3 is starting in May because the province is dictating that. We did have you do have the option of speeding these things up, and perhaps that applies to the carbon issue as well. So I think that that's a conversation for the strategic planning, if you're interested in that from a
Thanks, I am
strategic
very
perspective.
interested. Very interested.
Director Salmon.
Thank you, and thank you for that report. So this will apply to industrial and commercial as well as residential?
That's correct. So obviously commercial, or excuse me, through the chair.
Go ahead,
Chair
please.
Nicholson. Thank you, Director Salmon. So yes, all new buildings. Residential dwelling units are sort of apples and oranges with commercial or industrial buildings. Commercial industrial buildings, they're actually, the mandatory step for them will be step 2, but there is only 4 steps in that realm. And yes, but for example, though, an industrial building will be held to a much lower standard, just given the nature of the use of the building and the number of hours that that building might be in service during the day.
Okay, so follow-up, so I'm not sure I understand. So commercial buildings, this change from May 1st will not affect new commercial?
It will. It will. I don't want to get too far down the rabbit hole, but I mean, probably 85 to 90% of the building code enforcement we do here is residential, single dwelling residential. So I mean, that was primarily sort of the information coming to you today. The commercial and industrial thing is a little bit different. Their modeling is different. The standards they'll need to achieve is a little bit different. unlike dwelling units, when you build a building like that, multiple professionals are required to be on board, like, architects and mechanical engineers, and they sort of all collaborate to, bring it into compliance, and we often take the approach that, we're relying on those professional opinions to ensure compliance, so.
Anyone else? I have a question about step 4. When is that supposed to happen?
I think 2020, what year is it now? 2027, I believe. Chair Nicholson is when we anticipate that, but,
What would be the challenges of speeding that up?
I don't know if we still have that ability to do that now. Like, I think we're sort of in the realm where, we're under the umbrella of the building code and the building act. And, we do as the province dictates and steward over the building code regulations. Certainly, if an applicant volunteered to do better, we wouldn't stop them. But as far as requiring them to do more, I don't believe we have that option anymore.
Okay, maybe could you double check on
I can
that?
follow up for you on that.
That would be great.
Absolutely.
Director McClinton.
One last question about like renovations. Just curious, like, so if you're at step 3, you build your new house, and in a year from now you want to do a renovation, are they required to be rechecked by the, sorry, I forget the name of.
Energy advisor.
Thank you, energy advisor. Yeah, sounds like a superhero.
Yeah, through the chair. Not necessarily. Like, I think, that is sort of, that scenario could maybe be used to exploit a number of regulations potentially. But, if you finished your house today and I handed you an occupancy certificate and you walked in tomorrow to renovate, then.
If I can maybe just clarify what I meant, like, so if you build, your house is finished in June or what, so you're in the new time, and then a year down the road you want to renovate. Like, is that, now that we're at this new step, do they need to maintain it after renovations? Like, show proof of that?
Well, I think, excuse me, through the chair, I think we would have to sort of examine each scope of work for its uniqueness. Like, if you said to me, I'm just going to punch on a little bedroom or something, then, we would probably have a discretionary solution to be reasonable with you about that. If you came to us and said, I'm tearing it down to the studs and putting in all new windows and putting a bedroom on, then I'd probably say, yes, we're going to go to step.
Great, thank you. Anyone else? Thank you so much. That
Okay.
was super interesting.
Thank you all.
Okay, last report.
R12 is a report from the Community Planning Division. We propose suite amendments, electoral areas A and C. Would you like me to read the recommendation?
Well, let's hear from Mr. Senior Planner, Mr. Tippett, manager of all great things.
Okay. Thank you, Madam Chair. I would appreciate it if it was read out at the end because I don't have a copy of the report handy. So I don't have a presentation for this on PowerPoint. All I want to say is we have followed through with the committee's desire to refer the matter of making some amendments to the suite regulations at both Electoral Area A and Electoral Area C to the advisory planning commissions of those two communities. Chloe Boyle attended the Area A session for me when I was not feeling well, and I, a week later, attended the Area C session myself. Both APCs were supportive of proceeding with the proposed amendments, and the staff report essentially recommends proceeding to the bylaw stage and eventually going to a public hearing, but I don't know all the details, so perhaps that could be read out later. If you have any questions about the report or the matters generally, please, I'll try to answer them.
Do any questions, anyone? Director Acton does have a question. I think you're on mute.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Mr. Tippett. I guess my question is, when I was looking through the report, I didn't see anything that was similar to the same, it was in Area B where Area B's report specifies areas where it didn't apply because of riparian area or close to a lake or close to a river. So are there any areas in A and C that were considered like that, like rivers or along the ocean or anything considered as no-go zones?
Thank you for the question. Through you, Madam Chair, the answer to the question is there are already, because that's a newer zoning bylaw than Area B, a number of provisions in the bylaw respecting setbacks from bodies of water and sensitive environmental features, which in Area B weren't as prominent because of the age of the bylaw. So yeah, they were considered, but the amendment doesn't get as deeply into that because of the, as I say, better treatment of the issue in the South Cowichan zoning bylaw.
Okay. Anyone else? Director Salmon?
Yeah, thank you. Just, yeah, there's such a critical need for housing. Just a procedure one, but is the public hearing mandatory in this? Can we?
Madam Chair, a public hearing is not mandatory. It's an option to proceed just with public notice rather than public hearing. And so the committee could certainly choose that option if they're anxious to get, these matters, into the bylaw, if that is the desire of the committee. A hearing probably would add approximately a month or a month and a half to the process, let's say, assuming an amendment is the end result in both scenarios.
Was the hearing done for Area B?
Yes, Madam Chair, it was, and it was last night, so we shouldn't talk about it.
All right, we won't.
Okay, thank you. I'm not sure what to think about that, but willing to hear from others whether we really need a public hearing for this.
I got my hand up.
Yep, go ahead.
Thank you. I would rather see us have the public hearing. I don't think the public really likes us changing bylaws without, this is kind of significant. And I don't think it's really, I think even for Cobble Hill, I don't think it's really going to affect that many properties because they have a lot of areas that have sewer and water already. I think, in my opinion, I think we should go ahead, and I think we asked the same question when it was Area B, and staff had recommended that we probably should have the public hearing. So a month out, I think, is wise.
Director Salmon?
Okay, I think probably best to carry on with the usual process just in case, so I would like to move that recommended resolution.
And do I have a seconder? And would you like to read it?
The recommendation is that it be recommended to the board, 1, that an amendment to the South Cowichan rezoning bylaw number 3520 to reduce the number of restrictions on the establishment of suites and accessory dwellings be forwarded to the board for consideration of first and second reading. Agencies.
There's a mistake here.
Yeah. In accordance with option 1, as outlined in the staff report dated March 22, 2023, to the April 5, 2023 Electoral Area Services Committee meeting. Number 2, that the amendment bylaw not be sent to referral agencies for comment. And 3, that the public hearing be scheduled with directors for electorals A, C, and F as delegates.
All right, so we have that motion on the floor. Is there any further discussion? Director McClinton.
Can I get clarification? I thought I read that it had been sent to, was that just to the APC and that they recommended? Or am I reading something incorrect?
Go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Director McClinton, yes, it did go to the Advisory Planning Commission, so it's technically not correct to say there were no referrals. The other thing is I also consulted with the Health Authority on the Area B version of the same bylaw, and they indicated that they didn't have any particular concerns for it, and so that's why the recommendation today is that no referrals would be necessary, but in a technical sense, they sort of occurred already.
All right. Any more questions? Director Acton?
Thank you, Madam Chair. The only thing that I kind of thought about was stratas. So how does this affect a strata where they probably have bylaws where they or do we have many stratas who've already decided like we don't want suites? And if they've decided that, does this trump their bylaw or decisions or neighborhood where they've created a little neighborhood?
Madam Chair, the answer to that question is strata bylaws can potentially exclude certain uses that are necessarily permitted in the zoning, possibly including suites or not making a strata unit available for rental, for example. They actually have fairly draconian powers compared to local government in these matters. I think there aren't a lot of stratas in the two communities in question that would be affected by the proposed change in this case. Having said that, the ones that would be affected by it potentially could exclude suites. Having said that, there's a possibility that whatever the province is working on for revelation in the fall with respect to suites might address that issue. I know they recently made some other changes respecting tenancy issues and what stratas could do in respect of that. Not specifically in relation to suites, but owner occupancy and that sort of thing. So, but this bylaw can't override a strata bylaw in that sense. It's simply enabling, and if the strata wishes to permit suites, then potentially it could happen if the zoning permits it.
Okay. Anyone else? All right, we have a motion on the floor, so all in favor? Anyone opposed? Motion's carried. Thank you, Mr. Tippett. And I guess that takes us to almost the end.
Yes, we have no unfinished business. Number 10, we do have the new business item, the supplemental information to be received for information. And then question period.
Do we have anyone who would like to ask a question?
Madam Chair, I'm Cliff Evans from Shawnigan Lake. Madam Chair, many years ago, I was in Toronto and they allowed basement suites. And what happened is a lot of the death rates went up on a lot of the tenants because they didn't have escape routes. The question would be, have we built a mandatory escape route out of basement suites when they're installed?
Well, I'm assuming if they're legal, then the building code would have looked after that, and I see nods over on the side. But I suppose if they're not legal, then there may be a problem.
So maybe we have an answer from planning? I see them nodding, so I think that...
They agreed that I got it right.
That it will be, that they will have escape routes, yeah. Because from what I hear, in some places in BC, especially the ski towns, we have students sleeping in closets and things like that. So I hope that we have some higher standards here for our suites. Thank you very much, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Any other questions? Ms. Kaufman.
Oh, stopped.
Welcome back.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Susan Kaufman from Satlam. Just a point of clarity on why our alternate directors are not appearing on screen. I see they don't have computers. Is there no other way for them to be visualized for the community?
Apparently it wouldn't work today.
We are looking into it.
We're looking into it, but it wasn't possible for today.
Okay, thank you very much. And then another question I had is when myself or any other member of the public comes up, we are required to identify ourselves, and staff often, or usually identify themselves as well. But I've noticed applicants are not, they're only referred to as applicants. Is there a reason for that?
No, it's just that I don't know their names, and I should ask them to state their name. You're right, I'll try to do better next time.
I was just wondering if they had different requirements. Thank you
You know I
very
have a
much.
name issue.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. All right, so now we have to close the meeting. Would you like to tell us why we're closing it?
Thank you. We're going to be closing under, so we have a few closed items. We're going to be discussing or talking about the minutes from March 15th closed EASC. We're going to be closing under sub 1K, 1F, and that's it.
Great, thank you. So could I have a motion to move into closed? And seconded, and all in favor? Anyone opposed? So we are moving into closed in, I don't know, 5 minutes, 10 minutes? We need another break, probably 10 minutes. All right, thank you.